Hi guys, welcome to another installment of Game On's Encounter Academy series. This time I'm going to be talking about random encounters. Justin is doing duty behind the camera today, so I'll be handling this one solo, and I have a couple of books here to show you that talk about random encounters. Okay, the first thing I have to say about random encounters is I actually think that they shouldn't be completely random, or at least I don't like to make them completely random. But these types of books are set up with tables and so forth. I've got one that's D&D, loosely D&D based, and one that's more generic science fiction. And they're set up to be straight up roll for random encounters type of things. But they also can be really good sources for making deliberate choices about your games and giving you some ideas that you can use to create specific encounters within a game. That's the way that I like to use them best, actually. But it can spark ideas, and if you want to use them as random encounters, that's cool too. Although I strongly suggest that you don't make it obvious that it is random, because I think that sometimes gets your players out of feeling that the encounters or the scenes that they're playing out have consequence and are important if they seem like they were just rolled randomly in a book. But either way you use them, this can be a rich resource that can make games a lot more fun. One of the things I like best about these type of books are the maps. A lot of times the encounters that come in these types of books give you really nicely decorated maps with specific regions and locations for encounters in them, and those can be used for visuals with the game, whether it's being used randomly or not. So with visuals, I think it's important to stress that while most of these random encounters and scenarios are written for a specific game genre or even a specific game system, this book is very much geared towards D&D. You don't have to stay strictly loyal to that purpose when you're using this kind of stuff, because honestly, encounters serve very similar purposes in whatever type of game you use. So if the subject matter is versatile enough, you can definitely port it over into a new genre or a new system. And again, with having these kind of awesome visuals, as long as the scenario and the setting is appropriate to what you're porting it to, it's perfectly versatile that way. A lot of these books have only sort of rudimentary dice rolling for randomizing things anyway, so it's not really dependent on any one particular system in order to work well. Another thing about porting over these types of encounters or scenarios from one type of genre to another is you can realize that they serve very similar functions in whichever game that you're talking about. For example, the typical inn or tavern scene in any D&D type campaign is fundamentally very similar to the bar scene in a cyberpunk or Shadowrun game, something like that, or even something in the science fiction genre further out in terms of space. Or a modern day game that's set in a world kind of like ours. They all serve a very similar function in terms of narrative. So even if the setting or the map in a particular scenario doesn't work well, you could reskin it with a map from the genre that you're running, but use the setting, use the NPCs, use the sort of plot points that are provided in some of these random encounters in a different type of game with very little difficulty, if you think about what purpose it's serving. And even if we go to a book like this, which doesn't really have maps in it, it's just literally a bunch of randomized tables for the most part. This too can serve a common purpose across a variety of genres, even though this one is steered at science fiction. Things like poisons or even monsters or NPCs that you encounter, whatever types of roles you might be making, Those kinds of things, again, serve very similar purposes across a variety of genres. So just understand that you can borrow this type of material, and whether you're rolling it strictly randomly or you're flipping through some of these tables to get ideas on little extra interesting tidbits to work into your existing campaign, you don't have to stay strictly loyal to the genre that it was designed for. So in addition to supplements like this with random tables, a lot of core rule books will have a chapter or a section in them that has very similar types of materials for randomizing encounters. Usually not quite as extensive as these, but they work the same way, and you can use them as the same kind of resource, stealing ideas that you can then flesh out, deliberately rather than having them be random. And if you're going to do random, if you need that or want that for your campaign or even a one-shot, I'm a big proponent of pre-rolling to find out what elements you're going to work into the story, because again, you don't want to be seen to be just randomly pulling something out of a book to throw in front of your players, because they're not going to be heavily invested in that encounter or that scenario if they don't feel that you were. If you just pulled it out randomly, they're going to treat it as trivial. And most of the time, that is less desirable than having the characters be invested in what's going on, because they feel that it's important. Even if you did randomize it, don't let them necessarily know that you did. I think that's an important thing to keep things sort of more exciting for everybody involved. So yeah, whether it's supplements like these or pulling it out of the rule book, I think these can be a great springboard for giving you ideas for encounters of all types. It can be scenes and scenarios, it can be maps, it can be settings, it can be NPCs, pretty much anything. So I'm a big fan. And hopefully you guys can use some of that material on your own and take some of those ideas to create some encounters for your players. So that's another edition of Encounter Academy. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for tuning in as always. Be sure to subscribe, comment below, and until next time, guys, game on.